5 Live Formula One.
Well, welcome to a beautiful Monaco. We've had glorious sunshine today, and as you can hear, we've even had some track action as well, the sport categories heading around, and as my glamorous contributors lean in to try and hear what I'm saying, I must introduce my glitzy team alongside me here in the harbour in Monaco. It's our lead commentator, Harry Benjamin, former Formula One driver, Jolyon Palmer. So good to have you back, Palms. And the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. Guys, I couldn't think of a more glamorous team to have alongside me this weekend.
What?
There's only one bit of glamour here, Rosanna, and that's your dress.
Oh, Benny, thanks so much. We're going to start with a compliment. That's really G'd me up.
What's
for
happened
this show.
since I've been away? What? Benson coming in with some fashion compliments.
Yeah, this is the dream team, what can I say? But this place, it sparkles, and I don't even know how to describe it, Harry, because there's just something different about going racing around the streets here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like a movie set, really. The people. Great place to people watch in general. You see all sorts of, talk about fashion, you see them wearing the glad rags are out in the heat of the day and they're swanning off to a yacht, or somebody's about to get a tender out to one of the absolutely massive, basically cruise ships that are anchored off further down into the coastline. But it is a bizarre place, I think, but you can't not love it, and you've just got to take it as, well, this is Monaco, this isn't real life.
Well, I'm glad you realised that early on, yeah. Jolyon, this is just a wowee place, isn't it? Every which way you look, as Harry said, the harbour is jam-packed full of boats.
Jolyon's got a pad, just
why
up there,
weren't we allowed to record this up there?
Never did live in Monaco. Because actually, you know what? I'm kind of pleased I don't live here, because it's a mad place. But I'm so pleased that we come every year for Formula One. It's still got me. To drive is epic. It's so difficult. It's absolutely wild. We say it all the time now. It would never get a license to race now, but because of the history, we still come here. The setting is amazing. And I still think, in terms of not just Formula One, but global sport, the Monaco Grand Prix is an event that anyone should go to.
Lando Norris was just saying to me earlier on that he doesn't smile when he drives this circuit. He can get to the end of the lap and then he can smile, breathe, kind of exhale. When you're watching, Andrew, I imagine you have a smile on your face, because seeing these machines take on this circuit is something else.
Watching a Grand Prix car going around Monaco at the limit is an all-time great sporting experience. It's mind-blowing. It's a sensory overload. Skimming the barriers, speed through the tunnel, the sound, even with these quieter engines now, this quick chicane behind us at the swimming pool, accidents, the challenge of it is just so extreme. Of course, the ostentatiousness of the wealth can stick in the throat a little bit, but that's all Monaco for you. It's the old Somerset Maugham quote, it's a sunny place for shady people, still survives and rings true today, but there's nothing like it. It's just awesome.
It really is. And yet, as we arrive here, there's always that noise, isn't there, of have the cars outgrown Monaco, it's a procession. We still buy into it, though.
Well, yeah, but for all the reasons the guys have just said, as I just bump into somebody behind me, I think, yeah, but we do still buy into it. Look, this weekend, I'm sure we'll get into it, we're trying to spice up the race for Sunday, because Monaco Grand Prix is a bit of a procession, but we take it because we get one of the best Saturdays of the entire season when it comes to qualifying, where the walls are so close, one mistake leads to the biggest of consequences, and at the end of the day you take that massive high and then you kind of deal with it, even though the race is a bit of a low. But that could change this weekend.
It certainly could. Well, look, we've got so much coming up on the show. I'm going to let Andrew head off, because he's going to go and sit down with championship leader Oscar Piastri to find out his thoughts ahead of this weekend. Andrew, you head off. Maybe we'll see you later.
Thanks, Rosanna, I will.
Off to sample the hospitality of McLaren, I'm sure. Lots of other things coming up as well on the show. Harry's going to check in with the British rookie Ollie Bearman. We've had a close eye on him, haven't we, over the start of the season. And a Red Bull closing the gap on McLaren. We'll talk about that and, of course, discuss whether Williams are really back after that incredible result for them last time out in Imola. And, guys, have a little think, because at the end of the show, I'd love to get your favourite Monaco moment or memory. So get your thinking caps on. And while you're thinking and pondering, let's just have a little look at how the championship standings are at the moment. As I said, Oscar Piastri leading the way at the moment, but it's super close. He's on 146 points, ahead of his teammate and closest rival Lando Norris on 133. Then it's Max Verstappen third, George Russell fourth, and Charles Leclerc fifth, just ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton in sixth, Kimi Antonelli seventh, Alex Albon 8th, Ocon 9th, and Lance Stroll 10th. That's your top 10 in the driver's standings, and it's McLaren leading the way in the constructors ahead of Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Williams in P5. It's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? We're going to talk about Williams, but I just hadn't got them there for P5 in the standings. But before we get into all of the sort of team stories, let's take a little step back, because this weekend is going to be different, Harry, isn't it? We're going to have a mandated 2-stopper race on Sunday. What were your thoughts when that rule was applied?
I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for trying something new. It's a mandated pit stop, a second pit stop, but effectively it's asking the drivers to run 3 sets of tyres during the Grand Prix. And that's come rain or shine, because they've all been given an extra set of the wet tyre as well. So it very much is to promote that second pit stop. It feels like a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to last year, where we had that huge crash between Perez and the 2 Haas cars going up the hill towards Casino. So we can breathe a little bit as the cars behind us die down.
No, take it down from the shouting
there's one coming
tempo.
this way. Yeah. So I think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction there, because that brought out the red flag last year. So everyone gets effectively got a free pit stop, change tyres, and then it's just managing your pace till the end. No one can overtake because the cars are too big and you can't find the delta here. So I think it's a reaction to that. But generally, Monaco Sunday Grand Prix have always been one-stops in the last 5 to 10 years. So much like when we introduce sprints, yeah, there'll be some that say it's a bit of a gimmick and for the show, but let's see if it works.
So track position's always been the most important thing in Monaco. It's very difficult to overtake. It's almost impossible to overtake now. So that's why I think you have this conundrum now as Formula One event organisers. Do you have a Monaco Grand Prix where we all love coming here? Qualifying's amazing. To win a Monaco Grand Prix is still a driver's dream. But do you have it where you come here and actually the race can be a bit boring? Or do you have it where you come here and the race, it might still be a bit boring, we don't know. But it might just be a little bit different. Track position will still be important. You still will be nigh on impossible to overtake. I'm kind of expecting it to be a bit of a weird race, to be honest. The strategy is going to be intense for everyone, because overtaking is so difficult. I think teams will do odd things that wouldn't, technically be by the book. But do you have an odd race or do you have a boring race? Because otherwise, there's not a lot of options with the modern cars in Monaco.
Exactly. If they hadn't brought it in, maybe we'd be all standing here saying, oh, it's going to be a one-stopper, oh, it's so boring.
By the way, I have actually really enjoyed a few of the recent Monaco Grand Prix. There still hasn't been overtaking, but I've bought into the fact that there might be. We had rain.
Sold yourself the dream.
I'm like the boy who cried wolf to myself. Yeah. 2 years ago we had a downpour in the race, and it was so entertaining. The order did shuffle around. We've had dry races that have been good as well. Sergio Perez just holding off Carlos Sainz the year before that. Last year was particularly bad, so I agree with Harry. It's absolutely a knee-jerk reaction to that. But that could happen again, because if there's an early red flag or something, we'd just have the same terrible race on our hands again.
Yeah, and if it's a boring race this year, what do you do next year? Well, let's hear what Max Verstappen has to say about this new rule coming in for this year's Monaco Grand Prix.
I guess it can go both ways, where it can be quite straightforward, or it can go completely crazy because of safety cars coming into play or not making the right calls. I think, it will spice it up probably a bit more, because normally, when you have that one stop, once you have a good pit stop and everything is fine, then you drive to the end. You just have to stay focused and not hit the barrier. But maybe with a 2-stop, it can create something different. People gambling, guessing, when the right time is to box. So hopefully it will spice it up a bit more.
So that was Max Verstappen, and I have to say the drivers in general have been pretty open about this new race strategy. But are we going to see some strange strategies? Teammates working with each other, perhaps pitting on the first lap, or running almost really, 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 really long and then doing the stops at the end, or something like that, Jolien?
Yeah, we're going to see all sorts, I think. Firstly, if you start at the back, you should probably pit lap 1 and lap 2. Just to give yourself the option. You've got then 2 pit stops out of the way. You can then maybe use the clear air to go and close up the pace. So I think we'll see people doing 2 pit stops extremely early. But then if you're at the front, you still want that track position. So you can't pit and fall into traffic still. That would be a cardinal sin. So you have to either have a teammate to back up the rest of the field if you're line astern, which we'll see plenty of, I'm sure. If Haas somehow qualify 8th and 9th, the guy in 9th should just back off, allow the guy in 8th to pit twice. Bingo, they're going to have an 8th place finish at the worst. So we'll see a bit of that. And if you're at the front, I think you're going to have to push, and I think that's the fun of it. Unless you're 1-2. If McLaren lock out the front row, they can play around with it, like the Haas analogy. But if Verstappen's P1, Piastri's P2, then it starts to get a bit of fun. And I think Verstappen then can't just sit back and wait, which we've seen in recent years.
God, the geek in me. I'd love to see the data simulation and how they predict this.
Yeah, well, I think it's also just try and stop that pace management, as Jolyon was alluding to. But also there are, you could try something bold and pit early and then try and go all the way to the end, find that clean air, and maybe then hope for some sort of safety car towards the end and get that cheap stop. But if it doesn't come and you get something like a red flag with 5 laps to go and you're still out there and you haven't made your stop and that's the end of the race, then you're in trouble.
What's the penalty?
You're going to get a 30-second time penalty or disqualification at the discretion of the stewards.
So basically, no one will need to pit for tyres. We saw last year that a hard tyre can do the whole race. So the tyres are technically a step softer this year, but the tyres will be able to do, I think, the race distance. So it's about pitting when you can have a free pit stop, or the cheapest pit stop in terms of track position loss than you possibly can. And any time that opportunity comes, basically dive into the pits, because you can then use the pace of the car and your driver performance to get back. That's anyway how I'm reading it on a Thursday. Maybe we're completely different.
I actually wonder though if it also could help, because the pit lane here is quite spicy. If they all come in, it's small, it's narrow. Some people, if a safety car comes out, it's almost better to pit on the second lap after to have that space. It's less than 20 seconds to pit loss time. But I wonder, the teams at the start of the pit lane, you get your McLarens, your Ferraris, versus the Sauber at the very end of the pit lane. I wonder if that's going to be a bit of an advantage for those teams towards the end, who have maybe a bit of a traffic on the way in, but they have a straight, easy out, where it's also slightly easier to merge into the traffic too.
We've seen that a few times, haven't we? The first pit box then has to wait for everyone else to filter in if there's bedlam in the pits, which there might be. But I don't think it's an obvious thing for everyone to pit early on if there's a safety car, because then Haas from 8th and 9th become 2 and 3, and then they guarantee a second place finish instead of an 8th place finish. So I'm talking myself into this.
Yeah,
I think
like
it could be all right.
That's the point, is to give us talking points.
Buzzing, guys.
Steady on, it's only Thursday, Jolyon. Well, let's look back on Imola then, because I don't know about you guys, but after Miami, I was sort of thinking Verstappen was sort of losing touch with the McLarens, but whoa. Did he put himself back in the game in Imola with that incredible pass at the start, taking Oscar Piastri by surprise, I think. But he's still totally in the championship fight, isn't he, Harry?
Absolutely, yeah, he will 100%. Look, I mean, this Red Bull, we talk about it being slightly slower and them having their problems. The margins that there are in Formula 1 this season, it's not that far behind. But at a track like Imola, with the upgrade package as well that's being brought to, it just seemed to benefit the Red Bull a little more so than the McLarens. But we come to a circuit like this where it's almost completely the opposite, and it looks like the advantage will swing back. So I think that's what we're going to be seeing here. We're going to see, like in Imola, where Red Bull and McLaren are almost nip and tuck, but then we have other circuits where actually McLaren will probably end up going on to dominate. And it's about those weekends where, like in Imola, Max Verstappen and Red Bull need to do everything they can to keep themselves in the hunt, chuck it round the outside at Tamburello, hope for the best, and hope that a Piastri or Norris is maybe a bit too tentative, like Piastri was early on the brakes in Imola, and make the most of that.
I think it's been a bit crazy how Max has been written off in the first part of the season or over the winter, thinking that he's not going to be in the championship fight, because he absolutely is. He's a ruthless competitor. He's the best driver in the field. Imola is the sort of race that shows it. No one else is pulling off the move that Max did. If Max is in Oscar's position, there's no chance Max is letting himself past either. And it just shows that the driver made the difference and won the race. But the car's not bad. McLaren and Red Bull were neck and neck on pace in Imola. And he's only 22 points away from the championship lead. There are plenty of things that can change, not least a technical directive coming in for the next race that might just shift the pecking order slightly. I don't think McLaren have done enough with the, in inverted commas, the best car for the first part of the year. They have had the best car on average considerably, but I don't think they've done enough with it. 22 points to Max. Feels like it's ominous.
And what are we now? A third? Well, after this weekend, we'll be a third of the way through the season. And it's still this close. Did you imagine that when we got to Melbourne and you sort of felt perhaps it was going to be McLaren's year, easy peasy?
Yeah, I didn't think Max would be able to keep himself in the hunt like this, especially after some of the earlier races as well. You had China, he dropped away. Bahrain, he was nowhere. But Red Bull have brought upgrades. They do clearly have quite a good car in high-speed corners, and actually Jeddah also was a race that Max could have won had he kept the start. So, yeah, we saw it in Japan, race 3, he was on pole. There have been flashes the whole way through, but it's the consistency that he's bagging the points. Meanwhile, you've got McLaren taking points off each other. 1 minute it's Piastri in front, then it's Norris in front, and yeah, they're not maximising any individual score. Their team score is brilliant, but individually, Max is still very much in the mix.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They've got such a stronghold when it comes to the constructors, and it feels like, Red Bull fighting really with one hand behind their back. Mercedes, obviously P2 in the standings at the moment. But if we look at McLaren, do they need to be a little bit worried? As Jolyon said, they're taking points off each other. And flat out, is Piastri a better driver than Norris? Is that what we're starting to see play out here?
I think Norris still has the issues with the front end biting, basically, of that McLaren. That's, if you're going to find a weakness in the McLaren overall, it's there, and him not feeling it through the mid corners, not getting the right feel for Lando Norris to feel confident to extract the maximum in qualifying, which is where he lacks at the moment compared to Oscar Piastri. But in race trim, I think it's pretty close. And look, there's all this talk about Lando Norris and his racecraft against Max Verstappen, but as Jolyon said, Verstappen is the best driver on the grid, and I kind of feel a bit for Andrea Stella, because he's banging the drum about we 2 number 1 drivers in this team. We've got to keep both of them in it, but at some point the call will have to come, and well, one half of the garage is going to be pretty bitterly disappointed with it.
Yeah, but when's the call? It's not
too
coming for
early.
ages.
No, but when do you make that call
ages.
though? But in the build-up though, as you say, you're taking points away left,
so
right,
they're just going to do that. They're just going to do that, and it will help Max. They still have the best car, and especially a circuit like this, it's very low speed. I think McLaren are going to be tough to beat for anyone else. And it's these sort of races like Miami where you see, okay, they do have the best car. And I think they're sort of resting on that to keep both drivers. They're still 1 and 2 in the championship. They're still ahead. They cannot prioritise one driver over another whilst they both look like they can win the championship.
Does McLaren care more about the Constructors' Championship than Red Bull does? Because at the moment,
100%.
Because at the moment, are they a Red Bull? They've only got 1 car in the game. Look, I think Tsunoda's doing okay,
Harry,
but he's still not there.
They don't care.
Yeah.
So that's why they're going to go out and out for the drivers, isn't it? And take points off.
It's what they always have done. They were 3rd in the Constructors. They won the drivers last year, and they were very happy with it.
Why don't they care?
Because they're a marketing brand. They want to win.
Being number 1 then surely is pretty good for the marketing team.
Okay, who won the championship in 2008?
Lewis Hamilton.
Huh?
Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton did, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
The Ferrari team. No.
Just about got there.
Yeah,
no
got
one
there.
knows.
Yeah, yeah.
No one cares, right?
That's the thing. If you ask someone on
Everyone
the street,
cares
they don't
about
care.
who's the drivers' champion. It's Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
McLaren won the constructors last year. Well done to them. It's it's an impressive
But Max
feat.
got 4 in a row.
Max is the champion, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Red Bull pride themselves on. They're a brand that they go punchy. They go all in for their star driver. They're paying him a huge amount of money to win. And okay, they'd want Tsunoda to be doing better, and they don't want to throw away the Constructors' Championship, but it's not the priority.
It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it, to see how it all plays out. Well, we released Andrew Benson, BBC's F1 correspondent, a while ago. I reckon he's made it to McLaren to sit down and have a chat with the championship leader, Oscar Piastri. I think you have, Andrew.
Yes, Rosanna, I'm here in the McLaren motorhome, and Piastri sitting opposite me. Thank you for joining us on the programme tonight, Oscar. It's the Monaco Grand Prix. You're leading the World Championship. How do you feel about the season so far?
It's been great so far. Obviously, it's hard to complain. It's just been good on a lot of fronts. I think firstly the team, the team's done a great job with the car, and I think the team's also done a great job with myself. I think that part goes both ways, but it's not just been the car where we've found gains this year. I think we've found gains in every area. the driver being one of them, I think. So it's been a great start to the year. A couple of moments I wish I could have back again, obviously, but I think everybody has some of those through the year. So it's been fantastic start, and hopefully we can keep it going.
Yeah, you've really turned the table since last year, as you were alluding to there. You've become the leading McLaren driver, 4 victories already out of 7 races. How have you done that? How have you made that step?
I think just trying to chase performance in every category, basically. I think last year what was hampering me was my qualifying performances, which I think ultimately came down to a slight lack of pace overall. And going about trying to find that pace has been definitely a challenging exercise, but I think obviously a very worthwhile one, clearly. And it's not been one thing in particular that was the problem. It's been trying to just find the last couple of hundredths in every category you can, and they all add up at the end of the day, because whilst I've had a few more poles now and qualifying's generally been a lot better, the gaps have still been incredibly tight. It's just that instead of being on the wrong side of those tight gaps, I'm now seemingly a bit more on the right side of those gaps. So that's really where I think my season's come alive a bit more this year, and maybe not made life as difficult as last season, but it's been the result of looking in a lot of areas.
Yeah, it's quite hard to understand for someone looking from the outside, because they say in Formula One the drivers don't get faster as they get more experience. They just get more experienced and they learn how to access it more. But you've actually become faster, at least according to your team principal Andrea Stella. He's used that exact phrase: you've become a faster driver. So can you give a bit of insight to the audience as to how a Formula One driver goes about becoming faster? Because it's not just about braking later and so on, is it?
Yes, I think, there are some things that, I think the first place you look at is obviously the driving and the data, and no two people will drive in an identical way. But normally there's some traits from one driver that are better than the other, and some from another that are better than your teammate. So Lando's obviously been a great reference for that, been very, very quick the whole time we've been together. So there's been some learning from him along the way, quite frankly. But especially when you get to these last bits, I think I am maybe a faster driver, but I don't think it's because I can now do things that I couldn't do before. I think it's just that I'm able to tie it together a lot more. And there was some weekends last year where it clicked. Monaco was probably one of them, in all honesty, where it would click. I would find the lap time and I would have a really strong weekend, and strong qualifying in particular. But that was once in every few races. This year it's been much more consistent, and I think that's been the thing I was looking for. And again, part of identifying that problem of qualifying was, do I actually need to go that much faster, or do I just need to try and get everything together a bit more? And it was mostly trying to just get everything together. But you work on kind of the technical aspects of driving, whether it's how you brake and turn, how you apply your steering lock. It's quite hard to teach yourself to drive uninstinctively, but it is possible. And there's been some of that, but then also getting the most out of the car, making the setup as personalized to myself as we can get it, really digging with what I need from the car to excel. So there's been a lot of different areas.
Now, one of the things that's always stood out about you, apart from maybe on the first lap in Imola, is your sort of racing skills. You're clinical, you're decisive, you're incisive and assertive. Where does that come from?
I think just from my experience of racing as a kid, I learned pretty early on in my career that normally when you do things half-heartedly in a race car, that's normally when things go wrong. Whether that's pushing on a qualifying lap or especially overtaking someone, normally actually the best way to not get yourself in trouble is by just committing to things. And that's obviously a bit of a mental hurdle to get over, but I feel like once I got over that in my karting days, then it's been more or less a strength of mine ever since. That's not to say that at times, you're not going to win every single battle you have out on track. And especially when you get to F1, you're racing against guys that are pretty good as well. So it is something that I view as a strength, and I guess something that I've just developed through my junior racing. But yeah, once you kind of get up to speed in an F1 car, know what your car is capable of, and what's realistic and what's not, then you can start to apply some of those instinctive tributes, I guess.
Yeah, and it's obviously come out in your racing with Verstappen for the first time really this year, and this is a guy who's renowned for being particularly tough, and he said to me in an interview last year that no one overtakes me around the outside, I just don't let it happen, and yet you have managed to do that this year. So how do you go about racing someone like that with that kind of uncompromising attitude?
I mean, for me, I even without Max saying that, just from watching him through the years and now racing against him, I already knew that. So I feel like, in all honesty, I have, maybe it's a slightly less brutal approach, but it's certainly not dissimilar. Obviously in Imola, he did go around the outside, but that's a very rare occasion and something I'll definitely learn from, of course. But I think in all honesty, Max and I race each other in quite a similar way. Very, very robust, uncompromising, and I think we both push the limits to an extent. I always try to be fair, but it's a very fine line between good, hard racing and just overstepping the mark, and it's always difficult to find that balance. But I feel like the both of us have a lot of respect for racing each other. We know what to expect, especially after a few battles this year. We know what to expect of each other.
You are about the coolest, calmest F1 driver I think I've ever seen. Maybe Mika Hakkinen is in the same ballpark, but pretty much no one else. Where does that come from?
I think a lot of different areas. I think just naturally as a person, it comes quite naturally. Whether that's from my genes, I don't know. But I think a lot of areas, like there is a lot of conscious effort on maintaining that. Maybe it comes a bit more naturally, but trying to sit in that nice zone where you can be calm and know what works for you.
Trying to take emotions out of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still a human and I still have emotions, so I still have to control it. And I think that is a strength of mine. But I think also maybe just some of the experiences through life, to get to Formula One as an Australian or effectively anyone outside of Europe, it's a bit of a different road that you have to go down. You often have to leave home quite early. You have to grow up quite quickly. You get a lot of life experience very early on. And I think kind of just coming across problems or scenarios in my day-to-day life has kind of taught me how to deal with these kind of things. So it's not kind of one thing that I rely on, it's probably a combination of a lot of things.
Are you actually as cool as it looks, or are you like madly paddling underneath the surface?
I would say 99% of the time I'm probably as calm as it looks. There's definitely moments in the car, where it puts my emotions to the test. Sometimes in a good way, more often than not in a bad way, I would say. But again, it kind of goes back to the work you do, kind of putting things in perspective. That kind of gets me through that, I guess.
So obviously there's two McLaren drivers this year battling for the championship against one Red Bull driver, or at least that's the situation at the moment. Do you worry at all that he might end up sneaking through the middle of the both of you while you're taking points off each other? Because the team has a very strict approach to allowing you to race all the time.
I mean, just being open, it is a possibility, yes. But I think on both sides of the garage here, we want to win because we've been the best driver, the best team, including against the other car in the team. And I think you always want to earn things on merit, and you want to be able to beat everybody, including your teammate. So I think for us, that gives Lando and I the best chance of our personal goals of trying to become Drivers' World Champion, whilst also achieving the main result for the team, which is the Constructors' Championship. And at the moment we obviously have a nice gap in the Constructors' Championship, and we can go racing like that. I think if we do get beaten by Max, of course that would hurt, but we would know that we both had the same opportunity to become world champion, We were racing everybody out there, and that's just how it panned out. So I think for us, it's the most straightforward, the fairest way of going racing, and that's what we've asked for.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier coming to the UK very early in your life. Just on your background, I got a long email from your manager, Mark Webber's office the other day. I don't know whether he told you, telling me all about your background. He said that you were getting car birthday cakes when you were younger, and you've been like a car nut ever since you were, I don't know how young, is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And you were in the car once when it broke down with your mum once, and you identified what was wrong before the RAC guy got there, is that?
Probably, yeah, probably. Yes.
But you moved to the UK when you were 14, is that
Yep.
right? How did you make that decision, and how tough was it? And you weren't completely on your own, is that right?
Apart from the first 6 months.
Yeah.
The first 6 months I moved with my dad, living in a pretty small apartment, and then after those first 6 months he went back to Australia with the rest of my family, or to be with the rest of my family, and then I went to boarding school. And for me it was definitely a big decision, but I never had to question it too much, certainly at the start, because once I got a taste for European racing, again, I'm here because I want to try and beat other people and race, the fastest cars in the world and just be competitive. And my kind of way of looking at that was, okay, I want to become a professional racing driver. If I can do it in Formula One, then that's even better. And the way of getting there is by going to Europe. So for me, kind of, again, removing the emotion from it to an extent, I kind of went, I want to achieve this dream of mine. This is how I get there.
And how did you come to work with Mark Webber and his wife Anne, and how much has he helped you as an ex-Formula One driver?
So it was through a mutual connection, really. A sports doctor, essentially, worked with Mark during his time in F1. And when I stepped out of karting into Formula 4, he reached out to my dad and I and wanted to train me. And we kind of always knew that he had the connection with Mark, and we actually didn't explore it for the first few years. But once things started to go in the right direction, then we got in contact with Mark. And, my dad was more or less managing me with the help of another guy called Rob McIntyre. But once I started to get close to Formula 3 on F1 weekends, talking to F1 academies, that's when everyone kind of felt we needed some more help here. And that's when we got in touch with Mark and Anne, then worked with him ever since.
Now, he obviously didn't quite make it to be world champion. He just missed out in 2010. But you're in a position where you could end this year as world champion. Do you ever think about that?
A bit, yes. But I've also thought about it before this year as well.
But this is when it gets real, right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, I've not thought about it more than just the simple fact of, I could be a world champion this year. And I think for me, it's very easy to kind of just go, that's the situation I'm in. But like what I've been doing in the past 10 years, but especially the past 2 years, has all been building to trying to prepare for when I'm in this situation. And it's very easy for me to just go, well, if I execute this practice session, execute this qualifying session, execute this race, naturally my championship's going to start to look pretty rosy. So that for me is where I think I've been able to kind of dissociate from that. It's obviously still very early in the year, and once you get later in the season, the pressure ramps up. Potentially some of the decisions you make on the track start to change a bit. But for now, it's just about trying to score the most points I can and go out there and try and win every race.
All right, Oscar, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
That was Andrew Benson sitting down with Oscar Piastri, our championship leader at the moment. And I don't think Andrew's going to have time to come and join us for the rest of the show because he is busy writing up that interview. And you can read the full interview on the BBC Sport website. I've just got to set the scene for you again because this is a magical place, the magic of Monaco. We're standing in the middle of the harbour, just alongside the Red Bull Energy Station, which is a feat of engineering, I have to say. There's a lot of feats of engineering in F1, but this is a special one, a floating hospitality unit. Boats everywhere, music playing out, champagne bottles. People are living the life here, aren't they? Just like you, Jolyon Palmer and Harry Benjamin alongside me.
Absolutely. We're without drinks, though, sadly. Maybe
well,
Benson's getting some for us.
Oh, that's what his role
Yeah,
is.
he's getting the
There we
drinks in. So he's not writing out that report
the
at all.
BBC's chief F1 butler and sommelier, Andrew Benson. There we go. Gillian, I want to talk about the Lando Norris dynamic at the moment and the mindset, I guess, because he keeps talking about going back to the factory, working with his engineers and his team to improve on certain things and working on whatever's really troubling him with this year's car. But is there a danger of overthinking it and suddenly becoming a reactive driver rather than an instinctive driver?
Possibly, but it's very difficult to do anything else when you're being beaten by your teammate. You have to deep dive the data. You have to work out why it's the case. You asked if Piastri's the better driver than Norris outright now. And I think that's too broad a brush to put. I think he is much happier, though, with this car. And when you look at Lando last year, he was absolutely thriving. But this year, he's making mistakes in qualifying that are costing him that we haven't seen. I have not seen in Lando's career, to be honest. And obviously, Oscar's doing a tremendous job, and he looks absolutely hooked up. But then when you're Lando, you have to deep dive that. You have to try and work it out. He's struggling to get a feel for the front end of the car. He's a lot of the mistakes seem to be lockups in big braking zones. You've got to try and work it out. On top of that, the pressure's then coming because he's making the mistakes. He had the crash in Jeddah qualifying. And even in Imola, Piastri's on the front row and on pole, and Norris is fourth. So qualifying is the big thing that he has to work on, and it's quite difficult when you have just one aspect of your driving that is not going right, and it's so public, not to feel that a little bit more pressure when you get into Q3, especially now we're in Monaco and qualifying is everything. He might turn it around. He's had some great results here, but if qualifying is your weakness, this is not the place to come.
Yeah, triple header's great when you can keep getting in the car and practicing and honing the skill. But as you say, when you've got a Monaco in the middle of that triple header, the spotlight is on you.
And he'll take confidence as well from Imola beating Piastri, even though he started those places further back. So there are moments where you have confidence and you can arrive with gusto to the next race and think this is it. But then it comes back to qualifying, which is the bogey. And even though you know the race pace is good and he's shown it, he had some great overtakes as well in Imola, it's qualifying that he has to get sorted.
Let's look a little further down the grid then, because the surprise package of the year has to be the Williams car, and Alex Albon putting on an incredible display in Imola, so punchy, going for moves that he really, with an old Williams, you just be like, hang on, what are you doing? And he could still attack, couldn't he, at the sort of last few laps of Imola. Can we expect the same here in Monaco? Obviously, maybe less overtaking, but that pace?
I think we can. I think Williams are in a really good position at the moment. That team has been going through a rebuilding phase for the last few years. James Vowles coming in and turning things upside down, essentially, and trying to upgrade their facilities at Grove. They finally now have two drivers who are capable of getting the maximum out of the machinery they are given and putting in performances that occasionally maybe outshine where another driver could get that car, as we've seen in the previous history. But two back-to-back top five finishes for Alex Albon. He's had 3 fifth places this year. If he gets a third top five, that'll be the first time Williams have done that since 2017 with Valtteri Bottas. And that's when they had sort of a Mercedes power unit in the back, and they were almost the second best team at one point after Mercedes. So that's a bit further back, sorry. But it just highlights how much they have improved, as that's not a car, that's some sort of aeroplane.
Private jet just landing in, Jonah.
Yeah.
Ready to pick you up.
He's got to move on. I think the momentum is with them. They've got 51 points. They are miles clear of the rest of the midfield. Considering we thought maybe coming into the season it would be Williams, maybe Alpine after pre-season testing looked okay for that best of the rest. It's astonishing what they've achieved this year.
So they've got a great driver lineup. Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, really talented drivers. What is Jimmy V doing though, James Vowles, team principal? Because he went in last year, sort of pointed the finger at the old machinery and said this is 30 years out of date, give it a kick, let's actually replace it. It takes longer than that though, doesn't it, Julian? So why has it come around so quickly, this performance?
Well, he's restructured the organisation at the factory in Grove. He's got in much better processes. The build process of the cars is much more streamlined. Obviously the design is giving reward now as well. The car is much better than it has been. And I do believe that having a competitive driver alongside Alex Albon has boosted the whole team a lot as well. I think having Sainz, even though Albon scored the lion's share of the points, having Sainz there, I think it makes him dig that little bit more into his reserve. So I think across the board, they've just become a more complete team.
When does Carlos Sainz start to get annoyed that Alex Albon is picking up the big points, the big results? Okay, well, when does it start to become a problem? Could it become a problem? Because Albon, I think, has beaten our expectations for this year massively. And I think we all expected Sainz would get up to speed pretty quickly and probably be the quicker driver. But that's not been the case.
Well, he is out-qualifying Albon now, but they're very close. And just in the last couple of races, there's been frustrations for Sainz because I think not necessarily that Albon's been beating him, but that he's not got the results that Albon has. And we had
strategy issues as well in Imola for him.
Which was unlucky for Sainz because actually he had out-qualified Albon. They were 6th and 7th. Sainz goes one route on the strategy. It's a relative dud. Albon goes the other, and it's glory and nearly a podium. And that's luck for Sainz, and it's frustrating that he is a Grand Prix winner, and he's come to the team and wants that buzz of this is why they've signed him, rather than us talking about Albon having his best ever year. But
we just have to turn and watch George Russell.
George Russell's getting packed
good luck
left,
this
right, and
weekend,
centre.
George. He's being flanked by people asking for autographs and selfies. He does sort of bound along, doesn't he, with lovely energy. He always looks like he's got a spring in his step.
His hair is actually bouncing.
It's weightlessness.
Oh, that's what I don't have. Weightlessness. There we go. Yeah, the plodding, the flat-footedness. George Russell. It'll be interesting to see how they go around here. But yes, Williams, the ones to watch, and I think the big surprise package of the year. Now, throughout the season, we have been checking in with Haas rookie Ollie Behrman, of course, British driver on the grid. And Harry first spoke to him back in Australia about his hopes and expectations for his first full season in Formula One. So 7 races on, they had their second chinwag of the season.
Oliver Behrman, nice to see you again. Firstly, I think I owe an apology for blanking you in Imola.
Yeah, you ignored me the entire weekend. Every time I saw him, it's like I wasn't there.
The first time I didn't think you were talking to me, so I apologise for that. But so are we friends again? Have you forgiven me for that?
I was always friends with you. It was the other way around.
Well, okay.
Now he's commentating F1. He's got too big time for me.
Yeah. Says the F1 driver. All right, then. Well, let's put Imola behind us because we're now in Monaco. We're sat in your swanky new hospitality overlooking the harbour. Huh? It's decent, isn't it? But this is another home race for you, right?
In a way, yes. In a way. I feel like I have a million because, we have all of the Haas home races in the US. We have more Haas home races in Italy, and Italy in a way feels special to me. And now living here, in a way, it's a home race. My true home race will always be Silverstone, of course. But it's nice to have these extra races where I feel like I have a bit of a special connection to as well.
Is it quite nice to sort of be back in Europe for a bit, just to get your head around the time zones, make sure you get those 20-minute power naps in?
Yeah, those power naps are important. And yeah, just even going to Imola this weekend, reducing the travel time tenfold, it just makes life much easier. And I think, this is more what I'm used to. And those long trips are something that I think you get better at with experience, managing your energy correctly and stuff like that. Something I need to get used to still.
Just building up into this weekend as well, before it gets super busy, you've had a little sneak peek of the F1 movie, right?
I have.
How was it?
Am I allowed to tell you?
I think you can tell us how you thought.
It was really, really good. I really liked it. I think it caters perfectly to, what audience are going to be watching it. I think it's going to be the biggest hit movie of the year. I really hope so. I was quite impressed by what they were able to do with the technology and the CGI and stuff like that. It was really, really impressive. And the storyline is a good one too. So they did a good job. It's a little bit Hollywood.
Do you feature in it a little bit? Is there a background?
It was funny. I'm not in any part of it, but I'm on the credits.
Oh!
So I was so happy when I saw
You'll get the IMDb credit.
Exactly.
There we go.
I was happy.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that one. Look, 7 rounds done. Still 17 to go, and we saw you way back at the beginning in Australia, which is when we last caught up with you, and I felt quite guilty actually because it wasn't the best of weekends for you, but you bounced back quite nicely. How are you summing up the first 7 races of the year?
I think the first 7 have left me wanting a bit more, honestly. I've been happy with my performance at some of them, not at others, and the team has been happy with their performance at some and not at others. So, I think across the board we're lacking a bit of consistency, particularly myself. I kind of expected that from myself, at this stage of my career. The speed is clearly there, but the consistency needs a bit of work. So that's really what I'm focusing on now for the next kind of quarter of the season, to try and work on improving the bad days and bringing them up. And that starts with getting confident in the car on more days, working really hard with the team to make sure that's the case. And yeah, just working hard during the weekend to make sure I have the correct approach and mindset. So yeah, I think these first 7 rounds have left me wanting a bit more, and that's what I plan to achieve in the next 7.
Well, you got a few points finishes, which, if I remember correctly, was what you wanted. I think you wanted 7 points finishes, but you got a few.
Yeah,
so we're on the way there.
Not quite 7, but we did a start.
But also, I remember you saying you wanted to learn as much. Being self-critical is the only way you can really learn and develop, and that sounds like it is something you've been doing. But equally, where are you at with the car at the moment? Because it has been inconsistent, considering when you look back to where you were in Australia last week at Imola. On the face of it, it looked like you had actually a really bad race, but you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think, for example, last weekend I felt like was one of my best weekends as a driver, yet I was last. So it's really tough to, and sometimes it's really tough to really understand where you are, because there's so many variables. So I think trying to remove one of those variables, as in me, try to keep myself as a consistent item within the team, I think it's going to make everyone's life a bit easier. And I think I made good progress with that so far this year. And it helps now that I'm in Europe at tracks that I know. Exactly. You've got the familiarity there. I don't want to dwell too much on Australia, but it's interesting just to go on the self-critical bit. How did you bounce back from that? Because to have that as round 1, where the car is taking you all by surprise, really, in what you're experiencing, and then you have those big crashes too, plus the bad conditions. How did you go away from that weekend and bounce back quite well in China? Yeah, it was certainly a tough start to the year and not the one I wanted, and didn't make my life easier, let's say, with my approach. But I think the thing that gave me confidence there was during the race I kept building up, and I felt really good at the end of the race. And we were quite far out of the window with the setup, but the car was predictable, which is the main thing. So I just try not to overthink. I didn't really need to change anything with my approach in China. Just build up a little bit more and stay within the limits a little bit more. That's what I did in China, and I was glad to bounce back after a tough weekend straight away. That's the best way to prove that it's a one-off. Yeah, and how is it working as a teammate dynamic with Esteban at the moment? How is that going? Good, I'm really enjoying it. We're pushing each other forward within the team, and we have the same ideas about pushing the team forward as well. So I really like the dynamic. We're competitive with each other, but we also have a good relationship off track. So far so good. Good. Okay. Well, look, we're on home ground, familiar territory for you. Hopes, dreams, aspirations for Sunday in Monaco. And actually, how do you think this whole 2-stop mandatory 3 sets of tyre is going to play out? Yeah, it's certainly going to make life interesting. Not really sure what to predict prior to the weekend, and our strategy really depends on where we are on Saturday night. So that will be definitely interesting. My goal is just to build up step by step. This is a track where confidence is key, so I'll be focusing on that and see where we stand. It's obviously a short lap. The margins are very tight, and qualifying is important. So of course I'll be looking to qualify well, but I want to do that in the most controlled way possible. Yeah, well, we'll be keeping our fingers crossed for you, Ollie. We're talking to you in Silverstone in 5 races' time. So it's not been quite... No, it's not quite even, but, But Silverstone is halfway of the season, I think. Yeah, so we'll look at it as a half-term report. Let's call this a quarterly thing. Yeah, we'll do it like that. You missed Imola. Imola was race 6, was the first quarter, but you weren't talking to me in Imola anyway. No, I wasn't talking to you. I wasn't talking on this particular branded mic either, so we'll just float over that one. But well, you weren't talking to me full stop, actually. No, that's not fair. The second time I said hello when I realised who it was. But you only Sorry, gotta go. Got bigger things to do here. Well, sometimes Ollie. No, talk to you in Silverstone. What are you going to hope to achieve by then? Even though it's 5 races time, what are you going to be satisfied with when I pick this conversation up again? Okay, no, I'm under pressure then when we get to Silverstone. Because I will play this back. Okay. Continue on that note. Try to continue my good work with the team and build up the rapport with them even more. And as myself as a driver, I want to be the solid guy that puts it in the correct position every time. If the car's the 10th fastest, it needs to be P10 and not P15 trying to be P9, let's say. So yeah, driving within the limits and building up step by step. Okay, good. Well, we'll chat to you then, Ollie. Best of luck for the rest of the weekend, and I'm glad we're friends again. Thank you, me too.
That was Harry having a chat with Ollie Behrman, and hopefully we'll catch up with the British driver a little later on in the season. Weather always plays a little bit of a part over the course of the weekend, because you just never know, being on the Riviera.
At last check, I think it's gone away a bit, but there was a little bit of rain lurking before qualifying. But I feel like you say that every year, don't you? And it can so easily blow in from over the hills. I just hope it doesn't rain on our yacht party tonight, Rosanna.
Don't rain on my parade, absolutely not. I know we're going to go live it up. Gillian, you living it up tonight as well?
Yeah, of course. It's Monaco.
Well, we're lucky because we're going to Aston Martin for a lovely dinner, aren't we, Harry?
We are, yes, very grateful.
And a couple of
Just you two.
Yeah, just a nice sort of intimate dinner, really discussing about the future of the coverage.
It was probably a send-to-all message, but we definitely got it. And actually, talking of Aston Martin, I saw Adrian Newey walking into the paddock earlier. First time on the ground. He's been having these lunchtime conversations, sounds like a podcast series, back at base at Silverstone with the Aston Martin team. I mean, Imola was a turn-up, so are we expecting great things now that he's on site and I'm going to see him on the pit wall during practice tomorrow?
Just wonder if the engineers in the engineering room might be a little bit nervy with Newey sort of sat on the end just watching their every move.
Of course, this is Adrian Newey, the greatest designer of all time in Formula One, having moved from Red Bull to Aston Martin, been on gardening leave. His garden must look spectacular. I mean, we're talking Chelsea flower show spec.
Oh, and we know you love the Chelsea flower show.
I do love that.
Look, I think Aston Martin would generally have generally made a bit of an improvement. A little bit with the upgrade, a little bit with really taking the time to understand the tyre compounds that Pirelli brought, going that step softer. They were really bigging that up in Imola and how much they were looking into it, how much they prepared the tyre. I was listening to Andy Cowell this morning. He was giving a bit of a briefing. He was a bit coy on how that would play out for this weekend. But I think Fernando Alonso's got a real shot at getting his first points of the season come Sunday afternoon.
Needle Andy Cowell during dinner just to really find out what's going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, here I am sat next to him. I think I've got Lawrence Stroll to my left and Andy Cowell to my right. So that'll be a good night.
That's the hottest seat in town. Right, I asked you at the beginning of the show for your Monaco moments, personal, on track, off track, whatever it might be. Watching it at home on the telly.
Yeah, winning around here.
Oh, soz about that.
Yeah.
Can't really beat that.
I mean, look, two wins in GP2, Formula 2. I didn't hit those heady heights in Formula 1, sadly. But just driving around this place, obviously, is a personal highlight, and yeah, the wins were nice.
Plural.
But okay, in terms of Formula 1, I still remember being 5 years old and watching Olivier Panis win in 1996. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Were you here?
Oh, no, I wasn't here.
I don't know. Your dad might have brought you along.
No. I was in my living room.
Oh, okay.
Watched it on the telly.
Okay.
3 drivers crossed the finishing line.
That was
for
more
recorded finishes.
Panis,
Panis
Coulthard
wins.
and Herbert.
Yeah,
Herbert.
Yeah. What
That
a
was
podium.
wild.
That's what Monaco can throw up, Rosanna.
You don't need two mandatory pit stops for something like that, do you?
Then there'd be no finishes when something else goes wrong.
All disqualify for not pitting a second time. My memories, I haven't driven the track, obviously. The one thing that stuck out to me is seeing on the telly, watching Michael Schumacher set his last pole position in the Mercedes back in 2012. He didn't actually start on pole because he had a grid penalty for taking out Bruno Senna the race before. But that was pretty special. I actually watched the onboard of it in the build-up to this week, and it didn't really work out for him at Mercedes, but he laid the groundwork for what was to come, and that was a nice moment to reflect on.
What was one of the all-time worst grid penalties for Schumacher? Imagine what could have been. Rosanna, what's yours?
Well, I'm going to go a bit personal. I feel like this place just throws up such incredible opportunities, even though obviously I've not driven the track like you, Julian, or you, Harry. I mean, you have, but you haven't. I've been lucky to have interview hot laps. So I've been around the track with Valtteri Bottas. I've done an interview into the track with Lewis going across the harbour in a boat. And it's sort of pinch me moments. But this whole place is like that, isn't it, really? Every which way you look is a bit like, oh, is this real?
It's genuinely is a pleasure to come back every year.
Yeah.
And after Sunday, the mood can change if the race isn't a really decent one. But then you come back a year later and you're like, well, yeah, this is a special place.
And guys, maybe the best memories are still to come.
Maybe it's right here, right now.
Yeah.
It's the 2-stop race this year, that's it.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Oh, we'll be looking back on this weekend in years to come. Predictions then, who's on your podium, that special podium here in Monaco, who's going to be on it?
Oscar Piastri, I think, is going to win the race. I think he's going to be too strong. I think McLaren and him combined. I will put Norris on there, and I will put Leclerc in there for Ferrari.
I'm going to go Piastri win, and I'm going to go, there's going to be some sort of chaos with this mandatory second stop. That's going to mean one of the McLaren drivers has to be sacrificed. So I'm going to go Piastri win, Hamilton second, and Charles Leclerc third.
Okay, nice. Would you like to ask me?
And Rosanna, what are your top three?
I think probably similar to you guys, Piastri winning, then I'm going to say George Russell P2 and Verstappen P3. Maybe. But
I
who
forgot
knows?
about Russell.
Yeah, he's a dark horse with these podiums.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, it's a good shout.
You're just going to have to tune in to find out what happens. We've got coverage of the weekend. Begins with FP1 on Friday. The race is on Sunday afternoon on 5 Live. Lights out at 2 o'clock, build up from 1 o'clock. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. We'll speak to you tomorrow.